Audio Jungle.
It consists of 5 phases. Reconnaissance. Now that's the act of gathering preliminary data or intelligence on your target. The data is gathered in order to better plan for your attack. The phase of scanning requires the application of technical tools to gather further intelligence on your target. But in this case, the intel being sought is more commonly about the systems that they have in place. A good example would be the use of a vulnerability scanner on a target network. Exploitation. That's the phase that's also known as gaining access. It requires taking control of one or more network devices in order to either extract data from the target or to use that device to then launch attacks on other targets. The purpose of the post-exploitation phase is to determine the value of the machine compromised and to maintain control of the machine for later use. The value of the machine is determined by the sensitivity of the data stored on it, and the machine's usefulness in further compromising the network. Now, covering tracks simply means that the attacker must take steps necessary to remove all semblance of detection. Any changes that were made, authorizations that were escalated, etc., all must return to a state of non-recognition by the host network's administrators. Reporting is the proof of your actions performed during the pen test. It's where you're going to report the findings and share recommendations to remediate the vulnerabilities and weaknesses. So let's have a look at these phases in detail. Reconnaissance, as you already know, it's the act of gathering preliminary data or intelligence on your target. The data is gathered in order to better plan for your attack. The success of the pen test depends on the accuracy of your reconnaissance. A pen tester works on gathering as much intelligence on the client organization and the potential targets for exploit as possible. We can classify the scanning activities into 2 main parts. Network scan is used to discover devices such as end-user computers, servers, and peripherals that exist on a network. Results can include details of the discovered devices, including IP addresses, device names, operating systems, running applications and services, open shares, usernames, and groups. Since we gather information about the network and system, this process is often related to the reconnaissance phase as well. A vulnerability scan detects and classifies system weaknesses in computers, networks, and communications equipment, and predicts the effectiveness of countermeasures. Now, since there are thousands of different systems and services, we should perform thousands of analyses to understand whether or not a service has vulnerabilities. And the vulnerability scanners are used to automate this process. Makes your job a whole lot easier. Exploitation. That's the phase that requires taking control of one or more network devices in order to either extract data from the target or to use that device to then launch attacks on other targets. The purpose of the post-exploitation phase is to determine the value of the machine compromised and to maintain control of the machine for later use. The value of the machine is determined by the sensitivity of the data stored on it and the machine's usefulness in further compromising the network. Now I've got your attention. The final phase before reporting is covering your tracks. It's basically returning everything to the initial state, the state before the pen test. Now, since you have limited time to perform the pen test, you might ask the system owner to define some privileges and exceptions for you. If so, you should remind them to remove these exceptions at the end of the pen test. And in addition, you will probably make a lot of changes during the pen test, such as adding a new user to the domain admin group, or create a backdoor into a compromised system for later use. It's very important to remove all these changes at the end of the pen test. Otherwise, the black hat hackers can compromise the systems using these modifications. The report is the fruit of the pen test. It's the outcome of the actions you performed throughout the pen test. A pen test report typically consists of the following sections. An introduction. What's the purpose, the scope, and the duration of the test? A management summary. The screenshot of the IT system to show how vulnerable it is. The findings section that lists all of the vulnerabilities found during the pen test. And the recommendation section includes just how the owner can harden the system. Now, it's obvious that the findings is going to be the most important section of the pen test report, especially to the owner. The system owner will see the weaknesses here and remediate them according to your recommendations. So you should give at least the following details about the findings. A short name of the vulnerability to give brief information about it. The severity level of the vulnerability. That'll help the system owner to triage the remediation process. The list of vulnerable assets. Which assets in particular have this vulnerability? A detailed explanation of the vulnerability to show the possible consequences. A brief summary of how you identified the vulnerability. And support this section with screenshots wherever possible. Recommendations to remediate or at least mitigate the vulnerability. And finally, share the references about the vulnerability to let the system owner find out more about it. A manual or systematic, measurable technical assessment of a system or application. Security audit assessments include performing security vulnerability scans for best practices, interviewing staff to understand the level of information security awareness, reviewing the access controls of the applications and operating systems, and analyzing the physical access to the systems. An important point to take into consideration is, in order to be able to get the most accurate results, we should perform the security audits with admin privileges. Now, perhaps the major question is, where can we find the best practices to perform security audits? Good question. Thankfully, there are some organizations and consortiums which regularly publish and update the security audit checklists of IT systems. And these are the most popular organizations to collect checklists from. The Center of Internet Security is a nonprofit organization formed in October of 2000. Its mission is to, quote, identify, develop, validate, promote, and sustain best practice solutions for cyber defense, and build and lead communities to enable an environment of trust in cyberspace, end quote. Now, they call checklists benchmarks, but benchmarks are not the only thing that they're known for. In fact, if you're administering IT systems, cisecurity.org should be one of your home pages. Bookmark it right now. I'll wait for you. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a physical sciences laboratory as well as a non-regulatory agency of the United States Department of Commerce. Its mission is to promote innovation and industrial competitiveness. If you visit their website, shown in the slide here, you'll find the National Checklist Program repository of their National Vulnerability Database Program. They have a wide range of up-to-date checklists. To help system admins automatize the audits, a couple of checklist formats have been created by these organizations. If you can create your own programs or scripts according to these standards, you'll be able to use a massive number of checklists to audit your systems. I'll let you know what some of the best known checklist standards are. XCCDF. The XCCDF acronym stands for Extensible Configuration Checklist Description Format. However, as the name suggests, the language is used to describe the security checklists. The language is designed to support information interchange, document generation, organizational and situational tailoring, automated compliance testing, and compliance scoring. OVAL. The OVAL acronym stands for Open Vulnerability and Assessment Language. OVAL is declarative language for making logical assertions about the state of a system. Its main component is the SCAP standard. It's used to describe security vulnerabilities or desired configuration of systems. OVAL definitions define a secure state of some of the objects in a computer. For example, configuration files, file permissions, processes. OVAL definitions are evaluated using an interpreter called Scanner. You can, of course, create your own tool to automate your audits or use the tools created before. CI Security has a tool. It's called SysCat, CI Security Configuration Assessment Tool, which automates benchmarking of a number of operating systems.